So hello, everyone. I hope you have been enjoying today's Newslit Camp so far. If you missed any of the earlier sessions with me, my name is Alexa Bolland. I'm NLP's Senior Manager of Educator Professional Learning. Before we get really started, just a couple of quick webinar reminders. Because sometimes the chat can get a little distracting, we have disabled the chat for this session, but I really hope and encourage you to use the Q&A button. And please feel free to use the Q&A throughout the entirety of the session. Don't feel like you need to wait towards the end. We really want this to be an engaging session. So we might try to stop and start with those questions as they roll in. Again, the session is being recorded and all of the resources will be made available to you via email. But now I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Denise Tejada, who is Report for America's Service Project Manager. Denise has over a decade of experience managing and training reporters. She has worked with YR Media, formerly Youth Radio, as a senior producer and editor. She's worked with several reporters across the US on a variety of multimedia stories. And we could also spend this entire hour just talking about some of her own award-winning works of journalism. But today, Denise is going to share with you all about how you can actually get a reporter in your classroom to help teach journalism and really strengthen your students' news and media literacy skills. So Denise, thank you so much for joining us. I hope when you share your screen, you're able to check off that box to share your audio, but if not, we will just kind of keep on rolling. And so now the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. You definitely made me sound really exciting. So thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and just start sharing my screen. I'm going to make sure that I select the audio and see if it works. It's not working, so it's okay. We'll continue, and then when we get to the video section that I wanted to share with you, I'll go over where we can take a look at that together. We'll just plan. We'll roll with it. So thank you, everyone, and welcome. Like she said, my name is Denise Tejada, and I'm the Service Project Manager at Report for America. Just a little more background on who I am and why I got into the work that I did. For starters, I'm the daughter of immigrants. Came to this country at 8 years old. Didn't know the language. I was forced to learn English quickly so that I could translate for my parents. Knowing that English was not my first language, I felt extremely shy. I was one of those students that sat in the back of the classroom. I didn't want to participate. But during high school, I was introduced to a youth media organization where they focus on radio broadcasting. And I enjoyed being a DJ because there was hardly any talking. Nobody could see who I was, how I looked. So I didn't have to worry too much about being, speaking and stuff. So, but right next door to us, there were other kids my age writing and telling stories, interviewing people, and winning awards. And I was like, man, I want to win awards too. So I knew I had to get over that fear of writing and being able to speak and share my stories. But in order for me to get over it, I needed help. I needed to feel encouraged. So now here I am, years later, with more, like I said, with more than a decade of experience of managing and training reporters. And before Report for America, I was a senior producer and editor and ran a youth newsroom. I share all of this because I believe in the power of mentorship because it worked for me. It helped me get over that hump to want to share my story, to want to be able to write and tell more stories and go into reporting. So this is what mentoring means to me and why I care about it. And what's cool is that Report for America does too. So this is what our reporters are doing on a regular basis when they partner with schools for their service projects. Very long-winded introduction there, but I wanted to make sure that you understood why I believe so highly about, when it comes to mentorship. So what is Report for America? So Report for America is a national service program that places talented emerging journalists in local newsrooms to report on undercovered issues in communities. This year, we have over 280 reporters and journalists based in more than 200 local newsrooms across all 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and Guam. So very all over the place. And I forgot to mention, but whenever if there's a question, please put it out there. I'm happy to, answer questions in midway through my presentation. So as part of their role with us, Report for America Corps members volunteer their time on a student journalism or youth media project, which we refer to as service projects. The goal is to support the media literacy of young people by helping them produce stories about the world around them. The projects amplify the voices of young people and help them develop useful and transferable skills. Corps members seek out service projects that work for their schedules. These projects, again, are 100% volunteer work, meaning they do this work on their own personal time. So they go into schools and they do this on their own personal time. They don't get paid for it. So just wanted to make sure. A lot of people ask that all the time. So how much do we have to pay them? No, this is a free service that they're offering as a way to pass down knowledge and mentor young people. So who do our Corps members partner with? I think this is a really important, and this is exactly the audience for this. So a lot of our Corps members partner with public schools, anywhere between K through 12. They join the school newspaper or journalism clubs if they have them. If schools don't have an active journalism club or any kind of media club, our Corps members start their own with the help of the teachers. If they see that that is a need at that school, if teachers can do it on their own, this is where I've seen a lot of teachers sort of like take advantage of this opportunity, because oftentimes they want to start a program, but they don't have the capacity or the time to do it. And so they kind of take on our Corps members and say, hey, are you willing to give this a try? And so they tend to do that. But they have also partnered with, a local library, local youth organizations, the Boys and Girls Club. And in some cases, getting access to a school hasn't been easy for some of our Corps members. We've seen this as a challenge, and it's hard to pinpoint why is it challenge. But I think one of the things that I attribute the challenge is to COVID. COVID just changed the way schools function, and so either regulations have been in place where they don't allow outsiders in as much, or there's just like a lot of red tape in order to cut through to get somebody to do any volunteer work. So, but that doesn't mean our Corps members don't do any projects. We also encourage them, if it's really hard to get access to the high schools or any public school, then we say, all right, choose a community college. We still want encourage our Corps members to mentor, to pass down, this power of knowledge that they have, and be able to, have the opportunity for other people for students to meet reporters and work with them. So that's kind of been sort of our workaround in that way. But I think it's still very, very valuable. Some of the projects we have seen are helping a high school newspaper expand its reporting or help a school relaunch their school newspaper. We've seen that tons of time. And especially during COVID times, a lot of schools weren't able to continue on with their school newspapers. So a lot of our core members did come in and help relaunch those, help, bring students on board and help tell stories. Core members have also partnered with, youth serving nonprofits to create a photojournalism club. They have also worked, like I mentioned, with the library to make a student produced podcast or to start a writing club at the local library. It means they would have to, do a lot of recruitment for it and create their own lesson plans for it. But it's been a very fruitful and really empowering thing for the community in terms of places. There have been very rural areas where our reporters have been where there are no media programs in the area, and they have created one of a kind of programs in those communities. In this picture of a tweet here that we have there, it's a picture of a middle school, Eisenhower Middle School in New Mexico, where the students are interviewing a professional soccer player. And so these are the kind of opportunities that our core members help them get, being able to interview. If they say, hey, I want to interview an author, or I want to interview, in this case, a professional soccer player, how do we go about that? Our core members help, schedule and research and and schedule that interview and then prep the students to be able to conduct those interviews. We've also seen our core members schedule field trips to their newsroom, and students come in and tour the newsroom, meet other professional reporters, see reporters in action, doing the work, going into the studios, meeting the editors, like, they could see where, their mentor is working in their day-to-day job and what they do, who are the people that they encounter with on a regular basis. So it's really neat, a very cool opportunity. Here's a picture of one of our core members working with two high school students on one of their stories. Other projects could be coaching and editing student journalists at a youth media nonprofit. We've also seen core members help create youth written newsletters at an after school program. And through these projects, I think it's important to highlight that our core members are not just teaching news literacy, they are also showing them how to implement the lessons into their reporting. So they are doing journalism. So I think that's what's really important. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard that a lot of you are teaching news literacy. And I think then the component that our core members can bring are actually doing the journalism now, implementing that news literacy lessons that have been in place, and how do they put it into an actual story, into reporting, and have people read their stuff. And so I think that's really cool, and I think that's where the connection can happen. Here's one example. We had one of our core members, Yadira Lopez, help children of migrant agricultural workers produce a bilingual newsletter to keep their parents informed about what they're doing at their school. What's kind of like a fun fact is that the newsletter already existed, but it was written entirely by the staff at the school, at the school's migrant education program. And so Yadira worked with the staff and the students to reimagine the newsletter and help translate it for their parents. So, that's also another way to think about how can they come in. If for some teachers are thinking like, well, how can I like the idea of bringing in someone to help me out, but aren't sure of how they can help you out. If you're in an area where, you know, the population, we're looking at a population, if it's like predominantly, you know, a migrant or Spanish fluent speaking community, like, could we do something there? Could there be a possibility of doing something there? Or could students participate in adding more content to a newsletter, you know, something like that. Oh, this is where one of the videos. So maybe what I'll do is I'll share, we can go through my section, which is the service project section in our RFA so website. But we had examples here where you know, we had one of our core members join a class and help relaunch a school newspaper. Like I mentioned before, one of the things that we have seen is that because of COVID, you know, resources have been cut, and one of the things that kind of like was lost was a school newspaper that at this particular school. And so our core member came in with her experience, kind of, you know, took the role of relaunching the newspaper and kind of building, you know, the newsroom again, the youth newsroom there, and have students write stories, tell stories, and brought that that newspaper back to life. And what's cool is, and these are kind of the things that we want to be able to see, is that this project continues on without our core member. So it's neat that they're able to help start it, help launch it, and then provide enough resources for the teachers, and kind of create a blueprint for the teacher and the students to be able to continue it past, you know, the core member. So I think that's really neat. I think it's a really awesome experience to see, and the dynamics to be able to have something that was important to that school come back to life. So all right, so that didn't work. Skip it. We'll
Denise,
go
I
to
did, all good. I did share in the chat the link to that page for those videos. Again, I want to encourage our participants to use the Q&A. I already have a bunch of questions. Denise, if you don't mind if I insert one
Oh,
before you
please.
carry on. I think what's so cool about this initiative is just how broad and wide-ranging these service projects are. I mean, you mentioned the creation of a podcast, after school, you know, sessions, you know, the newsletter. I guess I'm just curious, you know, how is the service project decided on? Is it what the core member is really interested in doing? Do educators kind of weigh in on what might be needed at the school? You know, do students have an opportunity to kind of decide on any areas of interest for a class project? Would you mind kind of talking a little bit about how these service projects are decided on?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I mean, I think just like any other program, right? We have requirements, and our requirements are that they work with young people, and that they produce content that can get published um, beyond their classroom. So that can look in many ways, and that could be interpreted in many ways. We have seen, which I'll talk about this in a little bit, but we have seen content that students are producing that's being published on the newsroom that our core members are working at. So I think that's kind of like a good kind of like something cool and enticing for the students to even kind of look forward to. So I'm not only getting published on my school newspaper, but there's a possibility that I can get published somewhere else locally and get more eyes on. All of that, I think it's really enticing, and our core members bring that by their connection with our newsroom. But also, you know, because this is 100% volunteer from our core members, we don't want to be, you have to do this with this school, with this, you know, no. We want to make sure that they are going out on their own and seeking these connections and are seeking these schools. They're figuring out, all right, which school works best who needs more help, what's a school that perhaps is interested in doing something like this but don't have the resources, and that's where our core members come in. So it is up to the core member to figure out what school they want to partner with, and what they can teach based on the needs of that school, based on what students want to do too. But also I think it's also important, and this is what I tell our core members, is that once you have found a partner and you're going into the school, that together with the students, they decide what they want to cover, what's important for their community to know about. If I always ask this, and I encourage our core members to ask their students this, and that is, if you had the power to, tell a story about your community, what would it be? What's missing? What aren't people understanding about your community? And I think that's a good way to kind of like kick off your reporting or kick off stories in that way. So I'm glad you asked that, because this takes me to this particular slide, which is a project that our core member did last year. Her name is Lucia Starbuck. And she was a reporter at KUNR in Reno, Nevada. She mentored and coordinated KUNR Youth Media, a partnership with the school district there. So each semester, she worked with 3 to 5 high school juniors and seniors on how to pitch stories, interview sources, write and voice scripts, and produce and publish stories on kunr.org. And it also aired on air, on radio. And what's really cool is that the program won an Edward R. Morrow Award, and also her newsroom, KUNR, offered an internship position to one of her students. So I think, like I said, these projects really take a shape of their own, and it really is based on and in coordination with the teachers, or whoever they partner with, to kind of decide, all right, what's needed? Where can you come in based on your expertise? How can you help us? And I think that's where collectively they decide, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to teach. And here's another example. So we have a reporter, Brianna Reeves, who worked with a group of girls ages 11 to 15 at an after-school program to teach journalism and GIS, which is Geographic Information System. So another introduction to AI. So she taught the students the basics of journalism, brainstorming and pitching a story, the anatomy of an article, sourcing, and the importance of interviewing. So the girls were able to publish several articles online, like the one you guys are seeing right now. So this is a program that's teaching AI. And so they're not teaching journalism. So this is where she came in and said, all right, how can journalism and AI come together? And so again, together, collectively decided that this is like the way that they could do that. So this is another way, like if a program that they are looking at, an organization that they're looking to partner with, does not have a journalism component, thinking about ways they can include that could be really interesting. So yeah, that's just another example. I had this other video. I'm gonna pause it because we can't hear it. But what's interesting about Montpreet, so she is an actual youth journalist in Fresno, California. And she worked with one of our core members, who initially started this program outside of this school where Montpreet goes to. So she was partnered with a local organization to run a Saturday class on journalism. And Montpreet just happened to be a student there. She took the class for a year, or maybe 2 years, I think, actually, and then decided that Montpreet wanted to start her own journalism class, her own journalism program or club, I should say, at her school. And so she worked with Melissa, our core member, to build that club at her school. And so now she runs her own club at the school. She recruited students. She is also bringing Melissa, who is our RFA reporter, to help out and still mentor them in how to, the basics of journalism, a structure, a story, how to conduct interviews. And so she's still bringing her along, but this is Montpreet's club. And at school, she's known as like the journalism girl. So whenever there's stories that the students want or think that the club should write about, they go up to her. So I think that's really neat, the fact that she felt empowered enough to want to start her own club at her school based on what she learned with Melissa. I thought that was really cool. And again, these are things that we don't necessarily plan for our service projects to create, but it's so cool to see that they're being inspired in so many different ways and wanting to do that kind of work. So it's really neat. Let's see. So how can you become a site partner? If you are interested in, having a core member come into your classroom and help you figure out like how to implement some of the stuff that you guys are teaching in the classroom. I think this is like an opportunity. If you're thinking that that's what you want, this would be an opportunity. And all you have to do is be in contact with me and just let me know, hey, I'm a teacher. I'm located in this area. I would love to get a core member to come in and help, whether it's do some workshops on interviewing or how to listen to some of our pitch meetings and get some advice on how to conduct stories, or show us how they do their own process of coming up with story ideas. Like, this is the stuff that our core members are trained for. And keep in mind that our core members are not educators first, they are reporters, and so it was a cool partnership between teachers, is that they know the teaching, they are the educators, and then our core members are skilled. They're very cautious with when I say experts, so they're very skilled at what they do, and together I think it's a really nice way to come up with like ways to show students how to produce stories or be part of journalism, be part of media and not just consume it. But yeah, I think, I'm excited. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, we have challenges in getting into schools, and so we're trying to figure out, like, make those connections for our core members, because we do feel like there is like a really cool opportunity for students to meet journalists, professional reporters doing the work, and get guidance on how they can also do that. How can they get involved and stuff and meet people doing the work.
Amazing. I think this is just so cool. A lot of my background is in student journalism as well, and students that have that exposure, have practiced or written an article or asked questions. I think there's just so many other life skills that come out of that, even if they don't want to pursue journalism. It's just thinking more critically about questions, being curious. So we have I've got a few questions. I'm gonna let the folks watching insert some questions, but Holly asked, do you have reporters that are podcasters or that work with that medium with schools? And they say thank you.
Yeah. So we have I would say we have radio producers, so we have radio reporters, and they are the ones that are doing the podcast training for. But again, I think it depends on the school, right? If the schools are looking for creating a podcast, they are helping in that area, and we had a core member do a couple of different variations of a podcast, and one of them was hosting a show and inviting guests to come in, and it was a political show, and so I think it was, I think can take a shape depending on the content, depending on what the school, what the teacher is looking for, but we have core members that are skilled in that way that they can do that. um, so they do help out in that. I hope I can answer. Hopefully that answered your question.
I actually have a follow-up question regarding that. So,
Hmm.
I fully understand that all these core members are doing this fully voluntarily, which is also just such a big kudos. But does Report for America, provide any access to equipment? Say, students wanted to, you have a core member that's gonna do a podcast, all the students want to do a podcast, but they don't necessarily have those tools and equipment. um
Hmm.
is that something that Report for America is able to provide to your core member to help get that thing started, or any other kind of multimedia initiatives?
So as of right now, we do not. And the only reason why we don't have that is because, like I mentioned at the beginning, we have a little over 280 reporters, right? So if it's a requirement for all of them, that's a lot of projects, And so we don't have the bandwidth to buy equipment to a lot of the schools or programs. However, we are teaching ways that the students can still produce content using the tools they have at hand. And we have lesson plans where how do they use their phones to record some audio. And I think nowadays, and I think this is where, like, if we're looking at any kind of like um positive outcomes of COVID, one of the things that we were doing, even where I used to work before RFA, was recording our radio pieces using our phone, just plugging in your headphones and then going into a super quiet area, whether that be your closet of some kind, and just record it. And people are okay with that now. That kind of audio is like a pretty decent. But they also sell, like, what we also do is like provide them ideas with like super affordable equipment. I think I've seen a lot of people wear like these little square mics now that they put on their clothes, and it gains really, like, the audio quality is really good and just plugs into your iPhone or your phone. And so we're teaching our core members like how to create lesson plans using the stuff that the students have at hand. Um, so
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, because our phones can also do so much
and
now
photos
too.
too, to take really
Yeah.
cool photos.
Yeah, totally. So is there any eligibility criteria or requirements for a participating school?
That's the beauty of this program. There isn't, I think if you are someone that really wants exposure, expose your kids to an actual reporter and get, mentorship with, the opportunity to get mentorship for your kids by an actual reporter, that's all it really matters. Um, I think it's just for teachers to realize that this is a cool opportunity that won't cost anything, and they get a lot of stuff out of it. And that, we've seen one cool thing that I remember one of our core members shared with us was, the basics of, like, he asked the class, this is a journalism class, like, how are you guys getting your tips when, for story ideas? And so they really didn't have a question or an answer, I should say, to that, besides like, people just come up to us and tell us, or it really just organically comes from them. And so what he ended up doing was setting the club with a Google phone line that folks can call in and just drop a tip or tell a story idea that they have. So even just like that kind of basics, right? Thinking about that, like how are the ways that stories can get ideas can come from. Even setting that up, I think it's really cool. But also, you know, I think also being able to teach skills that go beyond journalism, that are transferable skills in day to day as students get older. So we're in the process of creating a lesson plan just on like email build, like how to create an email, how to speak professionally, how to write something professionally, whether it is for a story or not, or whether it's like you're seeking a job or some kind, just like transferable skills. So they go beyond, that could be useful, obviously in journalism, but could also go beyond that. So yeah,
Cool.
I think it's just letting me know, emailing me and letting me know, hey, I'm located in this area. This is what we're looking for. Do you have a core member in that area that can help us? And then I'll take a look and see how we can connect you.
Yeah. And for viewers, if you reach out to Denise and they do not have a core member, like located near you, I also want to let you know that the News Literacy Project also has a newsroom to classroom feature where you can request local journalists in your area, or other journalists if you're looking for a certain beat reporter, and these are all journalists that have been vetted by the News Literacy Project. Some of them are also willing to come in person, some will kind of speak virtually, but yeah. So Denise, another question.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that you said that was really cool was that a lot of these projects carry on after the core member finishes the project. But typically, how long does a service project last?
Thank you for that too. So if they partner with a school, we wanted to run school calendar year. So that means so we're having core members have started already. So during the fall. So if they start right at the fall when school starts, they're there until school ends. But if they also partner with like an organization, again, it's, organizations run their after school programs by, like a 10-week, 13-week session, and then they take a break and then they pick it up again. And that's also that. So, easy answer is just be like year round. And also
Wow.
like there have been instances where, if for some reason our our core member is graduating the program and won't be able to come back, we can also find a replacement if that's something that's a desire for that teacher, for if they want to continue, then we can also find a replacement and find another core member in that area that can take on the project that was there. But for us, even if it continues without the core member, it's still a success to us, because that's what we want to be able to do, is have our core members create kind of this blueprint that can continue beyond them.
Yeah. Wow. I love this. I'm so excited about learning more about these service projects, and I hope that for folks watching right now, or for folks that are watching the recording, they reach out and kind of start getting creative about how, even if you're not teaching a journalism class, ways that you could still be requesting or having a service project at your school or classroom. So if there aren't any other questions, Denise, I just want to say thank you so much for your time, sharing more about this really, really, really cool initiative. And for our participants, I want to remind you that the next session, which is going to be a very, very, very interesting conversation about understanding news media bias, with what's going to be, I'm sure, just a fantastic conversation with Tom Rosensteel. That is going to be taking place at 5 p.m. Eastern, so in about 15 minutes. So you got a little bit longer of a break to use the restroom or go get some water. But Denise, thank you again so much for joining us and sharing all about this really cool work that you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And I really hope that there's that you guys reach out, because we want to be able to help out as much as we can. And we want to be able to connect you guys to really awesome reporters